Next, we're going to be looking at how to graph equations. Now, we're going to be looking at two different types of equations today. One is this equation here, y equals 2x plus 1, and this is actually going to form a line. And then the other type we're going to be looking at also is this equation over here, and this is a parabola. And we'll get into why those are a line and a parabola in a minute, but there's different techniques, shortcuts for how to do each of these, but the basic thing is this. If you can make a table and if you can go ahead and actually figure out the points and graph them and connect them, you're going to be in business here. So sometimes remembering how to do slope or y-intercept or where the vertex is, things like that, they're nice, but they're not necessarily necessary in order for you to make a good graph. So I'm going to be showing you how to make a table and how to actually graph these equations, kind of the old-fashioned way here. So the first one we're going to be looking at is a line, and that's the equation y equals 2x plus 1. And the reason why we know this is a line is it involves y and x, and the highest power of x is 1. This is 2x to the first power right there. Alright, so that's how we know it's going to be a line. So what we're going to do right here is we're going to go ahead and plug in these values here for x. And it can be any values of x, I just chose these here. The one thing you need to know is you need to graph at least 2 points, preferably at least 3 or more. And I'm going to do 5. Maybe it's a little extra, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and plug in these values of x here into the equation. So in this first point here, x equals -2. So what we do is we use this equation here. So we say y equals 2 times -2 plus 1. So that's 2x plus 1. Now 2 times -2 is -4, and -4 plus 1 is -3. So our first point is going to be -2 comma -3. Then we're going to plug in x equals -1. So it'll be 2 times -1 plus 1. 2 times -1 is -2, and -2 plus 1 is -1. Next one will be 2 times 0 plus 1. And that'll be 0 plus 1, that is 1. And then it'll be 2 times 1 plus 1, so that'll be 3. And then finally it'll be 2 times 2 plus 1, which is 5. And so with this here, we actually have 5 different points here we're going to go ahead and plot, and then hopefully they should make a straight line. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have -2, -3, so it'll be left 2, down 3, so that'll be right there. We have -1, -1, so that'll be right here. Next point is 0, comma 1. That'll be right there. We have 1, comma 3, which will be right here. And then we have 2, comma 5, which will be up here. And you'll notice here that we did this correctly, and the reason why we noticed that is that if you were to go ahead and connect these, it would form a straight line. If any of these points are off, you would know at least one of the points is wrong. And that's why you want to do at least 3 points, because that way you can see if you've done something wrong here. Then you want to grab your ruler and you want to go ahead and connect them. And when you do that, make sure you also put arrows on the ends. Okay? So you'll notice here I have my instantaneous arrows here, and you can just make your own. And then you also on the side, you want to go ahead and you want to say the equation. So this is where you label your graph here. So y equals 2x plus 1. Okay, so that's that equation right there. So we made a table, we graphed the points, we connected the points and put arrows on the ends, and then finally we label the graph here. Alright, so that's that graph. Now we're going to look at this graph over here, and this one is called a parabola. Okay, and this is going to be a U-shaped figure here. It will not form a line, and the reason why we know that is the highest power of x is x squared. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and plug in the values right now, right down here, -2 all the way through +2 into this equation and see what happens here. So we're going to take -2 and we're going to square it, and then we're going to subtract 3. Well, -2 squared is 4, and 4 minus 3 is 1. Then we're going to take -1 and square it and subtract 3. Well, -1 squared is 1. Remember, any number times itself as a positive number, so that's going to be 1, and 1 minus 3 is -2. Then we're going to take 0 and we're going to square it, and we're going to subtract 3. So that's going to be -3. Then we're going to take 1 and we're going to square that one, and then we're going to subtract 3. So that'll be 1 minus 3, well that's -2. And then we're going to take 2 and square it and then subtract 3. So that will end up being 4, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So let's graph those points here. So here's -2 and comma 1. That's going to be right there. We're going to have negative 1 comma negative 2. So that's going to be right here. We're going to have 0 comma negative 3. So that's right 0 down 3. We're going to have 1 comma negative 2, which will be right there. And then we have 2 comma 1, which will be right over here. So these are our 5 points here, and you'll notice that these do not form a straight line. They form a parabola. It's going to be a U-shaped figure here. Also, this point down here is called a vertex. Now with this kind of graph here, you don't use a ruler, you just connect it straight in. So I'm going to do the best I can here. So basically, you just take your hand as best you can. Oh, this is not going to look the best, but it'll do here. So there you go. And on the ends, go ahead and put arrows because they do go up forever and ever and ever. And there you go. There's your basic graph. And then once again, go ahead and label it. It's okay if you do more than one graph on the same axis. So y equals x squared minus 3. If you do more than one graph, then definitely go ahead and make sure you label each of your graphs. So that's the basics. Just make a table, graph the points, connect them, and go ahead and label your graph.